Hello and welcome to another edition of InspireTalk. It's a special edition for me because this is the first event that I am actually hosting. Welcome aboard from wherever you're listening in around the world. My name is Ranil Rajapaksha. We've got a really good program today for you guys. Before we actually get into it, I'd love to introduce you to my co-host, Stuart Harris. Hello, Stuart.
Hey Ranil, how are you today? I'm very excited to be here, and yeah, this is going to be a good show tonight because I've been looking forward to Ricky coming on board. So yeah, very excited.
Yeah, it's going to be an awesome show. I think there's going to be a lot of really good golden nuggets that a lot of people can actually take away from. Also, depending on what industry you're in, I think there's a lot of value in this one. So we'll actually get straight to it. But before we do, Stuart, do you want to just maybe go through a little bit about what InspireTalk is, who we serve, and what we're looking to achieve?
Yeah, thanks Ranil. So InspireTalk is a growing show that we're running regularly here in Australia, and we're pulling in some very exciting and well worthwhile guests that come on board and tell us a few things about how we can be successful as individuals and how we can be successful as entrepreneurs. And I guess that's the key to this, because we all look at what's happening in life. We've got these questions about how do we do this, how do we do that, and if we understand that fundamentally as an individual we're virtually a business in ourselves, because we've got income, we've got expenses, and we're trying to make that work. And then we're looking at trying to build into something that might be entrepreneurial. And sometimes we do that successfully, and sometimes we don't, and we don't have all the answers. So hence InspireTalk. That's what InspireTalk's all about. It's pulling these answers in and telling our guests exactly how they can go about making things work for themselves. And that's it, Ranil, in a nutshell.
Summed it up perfectly. Couldn't have said it better myself, Stuart. Well done. Thank you. Now, without further ado, I would love to introduce you to Ricky Nowak. We actually met each other, probably about 3-4 months ago, Ricky, do you think?
That's correct.
Maybe a bit longer. It was at a closed event where she just spoke to the room and just took over. Also, something in particular of what she went through, which was the POWER acronym, which is POWER, really resonated with me, and it's something that stood with me for a while, and I took it on a professional sense and also on a personal sense, which I might share if we do have some time later on. But just to give you a bit of a rundown on Ricky, she's the director of Ricky Nowak and Associates. What she does is work with senior leaders and their teams to harness, develop, and create sustainable, top-performing organizations. We're really blessed to have her. She's basically written 4 books. She's also a regular contributor to business magazines and newspapers in Australia and abroad. Without further ado, can I introduce you to Ricky Nowak?
How do you do, everybody? I hope you're having a great night, and I hope you feel powerful. Well, I certainly do, and thanks, Ranil, for the great introduction. I can hardly wait to hear what I have to say, actually. So I guess just in putting context, I think, around the POWER acronym for you all, it came about because I know from my experiences, and you may also know from yours out there, that competing for time and competing for engagement with the people that we speak to, the people that we engage with or potentially want to engage with, is getting harder and harder. And as a result, the time that we have to get someone's interest, to gain their focus, is also getting more and more difficult. People have less time and perhaps less inclined to give us as much time as they had in the past. And look, there are, to be fair, many distractions, from technology right through to competing in very difficult workplace, and sometimes home place as well, where these collisions of all these things seem to be going on. So what I realised was that the earlier that we can engage with people and make it really clear and really succinct as to what we want to say, why it's important, what benefit will be to someone, and how we will deliver that value, will either make or break our connection. And one of the things that has come up time and time again in my coaching business is that people have said, you know, I'm fine once I get going, but in the first 10 minutes I'm fluffing around a little and I can't make my point. Well, if we don't make our point, the unintended consequence is that people check out before they've really checked in. So in thinking a little bit about that, I thought, how can I make it easy? And how can I make it easy for people to transfer that knowledge? And when I put it down on paper and I started playing around with ideas, the word power came out to me, and I used this acronym. So let me explain. If you put yourself in a position right now of wanting to speak to an audience or needing to pick up the phone or even write an email, the most difficult issue is getting clear on the real purpose behind it. Not everything else around it, not a whole lot of context, but just really what is the purpose of the conversation. And if people get that clear, and you can get it clear in, say, 10 to 15 words maximum, you make it very easy for the listener to go, aha. So think about a presentation or a conversation that you might need to have with someone, and think really clearly, what is the purpose of having that chat? Why? What is the real significance, and why will that make a difference? If you can get that clear, you don't go into any overused words and buzzwords, and you're taking up time and space. So think about the purpose and state it to the other party really early on. For example, Ranil, the purpose of my presentation is to help people get really clear on delivering high impact information. So would you say that's a purpose? I would say that's my purpose for tonight. So if we actually have a P, and that's our purpose, get really clear, 10 to 12, 15 words, no more. And the reason is we want the other party to remember. And that's almost like a plant. We plant that seed early on, so they go, I get it. When you can deliver that, it takes you very easily into the next letter, which is the O, which is the objective. So here is an objective. So the real purpose of me delivering this information to you today is so you can be really clear on how to sell the product. The objective will be making your clients understand the real value of purchasing X in X time. So give them an objective, because if you can articulate what that objective is, there's the second nod going on, either visually for you to see, or you're hearing in their mind, that's the sign that you want to look for, isn't it? You want to be really clear that you've got those two ahas from them. And if you're not really seeing anything like that, the next letter, the W, is the kicker. And then you can flip it to say, you know, this is really important. Let me tell you why. And that's your W. Let me tell you why. Now, if you can't articulate why it's really important, how in the world will someone else be able to? So we've got to make sure that by the time we get to the W, we're giving them a really good reason as to why it's important. In other words, if you miss this session, if you miss this conversation, if you miss the email, you would miss out. And I think the middle part is the best part to put it, because it's your anchor, and we're looking for these anchors. So remember, your P is your first anchor. The objective is good, but the why makes them go, oh, okay, this is significant, this is important. So now we've got the POW, P-O-W. The next one, E, and if you'd like to take a guess, it's at what that E might be. Some of you might say empathy. Well, we hope so. Some of you might say excellence. Yeah, we want that too. But the way I put it together is around expectation. I know from many conversations I've had with leaders in business, with managers, executive teams, and people who are working on the factory floor, the biggest challenge they have is really understanding the expectations of the other party. People think, well, they should know. Well, why don't they know what I'm thinking? They should know this. I've been working with them. Or why didn't they tell me that? This is really clear. The expectations are not always met, and I think that's because we don't really understand them. Maybe we don't take time to understand them. Maybe we feel we actually do. But expectations will also change, and according to priority, according to intensity of the situation. So I'm going to stress here that clarifying expectations from both parties is a really smart way before you launch into everything else, just to get clarity. So you might say, let me share my expectation with why this is important for you and how it will make a difference. And then I'd like to ask you a little, or confirm with you, Ranil, what your expectations might be, just to make sure that we are in sync. Because from my perspective right now, I would see that these issues are really important, and I think that's what you're thinking as well, but I would really like to know. And when we call it, we are pausing, and we're contemplating, and we're giving voice to another party. Now, what people want more than anything else is their voice. They don't really want too much of us. They just want enough, and then they've got an internal dialogue going on right at the same time. So calling the expectation is really honest. There's a lot of integrity around it, and it also shows that we can be quite nimble to understand that we might have it wrong. And gosh, don't we get it wrong sometimes? So let's be a little bit humble and say, well, here's a chance to clarify that. On the other hand, if we're having a really powerful conversation, we might be giving feedback to someone, we might be talking about performance improvement, we might be delivering some bad news or some important news. Expectations have to be very succinct and very firm, and it's not like pulling out a shopping list of 1,000 things that I expected you to do, blah, blah, and starting to lay the finger and lay blame. But expectations need to be very clear. And I would be very careful in your opening not to overload the expectation, because once you do that, we're layering heavy emotional content and people will forget everything else. You need to be very clear. So when we've got the POWE, we go, which is the purpose, state your purpose, talk about your objective, talk about why it's really important, and the reason that why it's going to make a difference. Outline an expectation, yours and the other parties, if relevant, and I think that's a key point. And then it takes us really nicely into the last letter, which is called, which is the R, which is results. So now we're almost leading our audience to what the results will be by clearly stating how results can be measured. Too many times we state a fact, or we state some statistics or some analytics, and we're not really clarifying how they're going to be measured and how those metrics will make a difference in our lives. So if we can actually talk about the results, we've got a better way for people to go, yeah, I want some of that. Yeah, that makes sense to me. That's a commercial imperative, or I can see that working for me, and hopefully you've graduated that person's or shifted that person's thinking from maybe being sitting on the fence, or they didn't want to listen in the first place, to working with you. So if you like, I'm going to put the whole 5 together, show you what it looks like now, and then maybe if you've got some paper and pen in front of you, you'd like to just write down the acronym and think about a forthcoming conversation or an email you might like to write or a presentation you're going to go to, and fill it in. So this is really your grab. This is the way in which you're going to gain attention. Remember, this is just your beginning. This is not your presentation. Let me make it really clear. It's just your entree that positions you for a better conversation. So it could be, let's just say we're going to be giving someone some performance appraisal. Okay, and this is really important. Once you've got the acronym locked in your mind, you can do it spontaneously too. So you can follow it. But in this instance, let's just do it for performance appraisal. So it could be, Harry, the purpose of the conversation today is to look at the areas of your development over the last 3 months, specifically around the new customer engagement, the existing client base, and the projected figures for the next 3 months. Yeah. As a result of my conversation with you today, I'm hoping for an outcome that will make us really clear on what personal development you want going forward, where the gaps have been to give us the current issues, and we can work toward a better result, and also ensure that you are positioned for success going forward for 2016, 2017. This is really important now, and why I'd like to have this conversation with you is to make sure that we can measure every piece of work that you're doing, calibrate it against the feedback we're getting with our clients, and ensure that both you and the organisation are working clearly and cleverly together. I know your expectations have been for promotion, and I know our expectations have been to gear you up as an emerging leader. We have to make sure that we're meeting these expectations as a business, and you have to make sure your expectations are also being met. I would like to say by the end of the year we'll be able to meet these expectations or agree on the best way forward. So let's begin. So there you have it. You've got a really succinct. The whole conversation took, a minute, no more. It shouldn't take any more than that. And then you can actually bookend it at the end of your presentation again. Clarify it in a similar way.
Totally, that's really, really good. We're getting some questions coming through already, actually, Ricky. But I wanted to just also probably preface this by saying we can probably use this acronym for, like you said, presentations, overviews on anything that you're looking to sell, but also cold calling. So we got a question actually from Kelly asking about how to use this this acronym when it comes to cold calling, or looking to when you speak to the decision maker of a potential client. How would you go about probably giving Kelly some advice?
Okay, sometimes cold calling can be really fun, and sometimes it can be a really big pain in the proverbial, both for you and the receiver, especially if they don't know that you're going to be calling, and so you've got them at a time when they're distracted or they're not really engaged in the conversation. And I think that the way around that to use power is quite a different way to use it. So what I would say is let's, Kelly, if it's okay, and I don't know if you'll prepare your callers for the fact that you will be calling, or this is just a spontaneous pick up the phone and here's your list. What I would say is don't get too, from my perspective, and really this is my experience, so you work with this, it's not set in concrete at all, but what I would say to you is think a little bit about being playful with this. If it sounds too much like a script and you can't nuance it, it's going to fall over, because it doesn't make room for individuality and it doesn't make room for your personality. I always say with anything that you're doing, a new acronym or a new script, you've got to be a little bit playful and put you into it. So if the purpose of this conversation is not right for you, nor is it right for that particular situation. Steer away from it. But predominantly, you've got to still outline the fact that there is a purpose to it. So make it really evident that is, I know you've got a couple of minutes to, or you may have a couple of minutes to have a chat. So let me be really clear as to the reason I want to have this important chat or initial chat with you, and we can perhaps log in another time. I'm not a great fan for scripts. I can give you lots of acronyms, but I'll play with them, not around, I'll play with them based on the personality and the time of the call. They're not easy, and I would first of all make sure that you are really comfortable using it in different ways before you pick up the phone and do some cold calling, especially if you're used to following scripts, because you can't really, I don't think, script this word for word. You can have the bones of it, the power, but substitute purpose for reason, outcome or objective for outcome, whatever it might be, as long as they're your words. The more of you put into it, Kelly, I think the better results. And sometimes when I do some cold calling, because I like to keep fresh, and sometimes, you know, I build some terrific clients just through cold calling, people who have come to my website and they've inquired, and then I've gone back through someone else or been referred to someone. So I'm ostensibly cold calling. I look at personality to drive this, because ostensibly you have to be totally authentic.
Yeah.
Ricky, the power concept, that very first one, is vitally important, and yet so many people miss it, and they don't really understand how important it is. How do you articulate the process to get even business leaders to understand what it is that they need to achieve with that first process part, the first purpose part? I mean, how do you encourage them to really define that and get that right in the first instance?
Look, the way I would do it is just say, we are often in a position of being influenced or trying to influence someone. And we have a short window. And if we get it wrong, we lose that opportunity once and for all, because the people will engage for a short time, and then they will determine in their mind whether or not this is valuable or not. And as a commercial imperative, I think people have to frame up a conversation that we get someone's interest quite quickly. And that's up to us as a presenter, as a consultant, as a speaker, whether we're in real estate or whether we're in sales, whatever we are doing, to determine what is the best way and be really flexible on how to do it. And if people are a little bit reluctant to go down that way, we have to ask, you know, how serious are you about looking for new clients? How serious are you about keeping your old ones? And doing what we did a couple of years ago is not cutting it. We've got an intergenerational workforce now. We've got 5 generations in the workforce. If we can't adapt and go fast and furious with ways to engage, we're going to lose a large proportion of our audience. I don't think we have a choice. And we have to find different ways. So one way, no. Many ways, yes, as long as we're comfortable in using them. And the more we use, it's like a smorgasbord, we can choose what's appropriate. And when I gave a presentation to the professional services firm last week. We had 30 corporate lawyers, and some of this stuff is not easy because they're analytical, they're data focused, they're knowledge based, they want proven practical things. But I'm saying to you, you can do all of that, but how can you actually do it to engage people quickly without using necessarily a whole lot of buzzwords, without overwhelming people with your brilliance? They're not going to be listening. They're going to be listening to what's in it for me, why is this important, how is it going to help me, and how is it going to be of benefit? Doesn't matter really the bigger picture. People won't remember everything. They will remember what's relevant to them. And if we're not relevant, we should leave. And that's pretty much how I see it now.
Absolutely. And looking at at the expectations part of this, I think that's almost just as important, really. I mean, all five are important, right? But expectations is something I see mismanaged all the time because, you know, we have a concept and whoever we're talking to has a concept, but they may not align. And just to give you an example, when I started out in supermarkets, I told a boy to fill the shelf with drinks. Now, the drinks were soft drinks, but the boy, all he heard was fill it with drinks. So he went and got water and filled the soft drinks with water. So the two expectations weren't aligned, and that was my mistake, obviously. So
Yeah.
talk to us a little bit about that and how we make sure that we get the expectations of somebody that we're articulating a purpose message to and making sure that that's in line with what we're thinking about as well.
3 words. Ask good questions. First. 4 words. First. You know, people will suspend some of their judgment if we convert it to them first. I think people do too much talking, not enough listening, and where this really will kick in, if you want to get it right around expectations, my key to this is before you launch into trying to influence and persuade whatever it is that you want them to buy or do or take part of, ask lots of questions. And if anybody would like to have a template of some really good questions, I'm happy to share them with you. You can email me at ricky@rickynowak.com. And I'm happy to share a template of some really good questions for you. When you've got the answers to some of those questions, like you're really listening to the answers, not just ticking them off and say, yeah, that's a good question, but you're really listening, then you've earned the right to talk about expectations. So I'll share an example. We had a client who was also actually in the professional services area, because a lot of my work is in corporate, business and corporate, and a woman came to him and said, look, she'd been left a large sum of money by a very wealthy family member, and what she did know was that she probably squandered it because she had absolutely no understanding of money or how to manage it. And he spent the next hour talking to her about hedge funds and stocks and bonds and international and local. And the whole time she kept going, and he thought it's a done deal. And at the end of the hour, he said, do you have any questions? And she said, yes, I have one. And he said, like, where's the pen? I can sign on the bottom line. And she said, how do you get your shoes to be so shiny? Now, this is a true story, believe it or not. And what he learned was he left a lot of money on the table that day and lots of other days as well. He didn't understand her expectation. Her expectation was really clear, and she'd given him the best clue that it was the only question that he asked is, why are you here? When she said, I don't understand money and I think I'm going to squander it, he had a zillion questions at his disposal. Tell me why that's important for you. What would you like to do with the money? How comfortable are you with the language around money? What do you know of stocks at the moment? Have you ever invested before? And all he needed to do was spend the next hour asking her questions and gathering information. And if he could have suspended that, he could have won a fantastic new client. But he blew it out of the water, didn't he? Because he didn't talk about her expectations at all. He was too busy talking about himself and how fabulous he was. She finished listening well before he finished speaking. So there you go. If you don't understand your client's expectations and you go straight into all the detail, you can be barking up a very sticky tree.
Yeah, I totally agree, and I think along those lines, I think listening is actually a very valuable commodity that's not really practiced much these days, and I think that your POWER acronym actually kind of goes through that, because expectations are all of the points are amazing. Expectations when it comes to us as well, and we're in digital advertising, and believe it or not, even if an ad, for example, is not a campaign that's supposed to go live is not, and we don't have anything new to tell a client, telling them that it's not live and we'll get back to you very soon is actually managing their expectations. And to some degree, I think that's where I took the power acronym, outside of the workplace with my son. Yeah, it was really cool actually. I mean, yeah, it was very cool. And the chat that I had with him was basically sitting him down and just saying, look, the purpose of us having a chat is that you're not in trouble, but I want to help you. And then I went through, the objective of the chat is this, and all the way to results. And it's funny because he also totally understood where we're coming from, but not just that. The expectations component made me kind of also question how to actually fill the gap, which I think is also what you just mentioned before. A lot of people actually like to convey and sell what they're selling. But at the end of the day, all we're really trying to do is just fit a gap that that the client wants. They've got a need. All we're trying to do is just find it. So I think this really succinctly, is a very good structure to do it, in a very uncluttered way. I think so. Yeah, it's really, really powerful.
Fantastic. Fantastic. Thank you. Look, just in closing, I guess a couple of things to be really mindful of. Think about what you would like to have happen as a result of the conversation of the power, and set that up as well so you know how to close. It's great to have a terrific opening. It's great to engage someone, but I think doing your due diligence and saying if it goes one way, the outcome will be X, but it might not go so well. So how can I reframe it? Because we've got one opportunity to engage people, otherwise they get a bit battle weary. And I've often seen people, do a great job at the beginning, and then they need to actually stop because they unsell everything that they've sold in the first 5 minutes by too much. So, and this happens often in sales. We'll set this up beautifully, and then the person has already bought the product, but no, we've got to keep telling them more and more and more. So don't unsell what you've sold. This way will protect you, and it just gives them a chance to flip it over to the other party, and then we've actually got to stop talking so they don't stop listening. And that's probably a good place for me to stop.
Did you want to have anything else that you wanted to add, or shall we wrap up with our golden nuggets?
Yeah, look, we just had another question come through, Ranil. It's a question for Ricky from Dale. He's asking, how does Ricky's methodology deal with conflict, disagreements, goal misalignments, different expectations amongst the team? So I hope you understand that, Ricky. Did that come through okay?
Yeah. How does it work? It works incredibly well, but the thing I would also say to Dale is it has to be congruent with the way that you may have managed the group in the past. So if it's been, if it's a toxic team, for example, or the team has not connected, or they're not collaborating or sharing, and it's been very informal, people have interrupted each other, there's been no discipline or no ground rules, and then you come in hard on having the purpose of this conversation is to get clearer, it's not going to work. They'll think, oh, they've been to some course, they've been coached, or it doesn't fit. So it's about getting people to a place where they too recognise that something needs to be done. So you might actually use the POWER acronym to say, look, I recognise things aren't working really well as a team. That's your purpose. And we need to do better. You see what I've done? We need to do better. I'd like to use today's team meeting to work out some ground rules for us to go forward on, because what we're currently doing sucks. Use language that's your language in the organisation, because what you want people to go, yeah, that's right, those sorts of things are going on. So I would encourage you to think a little bit about setting the languaging up really well, and frame up the real reason why it needs to change rather than going hell for leather. But if anybody would like to talk a little bit further about that, you can drop me a note. I'm happy to have that conversation offline. There's also on my website an audit called, it's a leadership audit. It's a 3-minute audit if you just go to rickynovak.com, you'll be able to pick up that audit, and it'll give you clues on how to start changing 5 leadership cues for you to engage in different ways with your customers, your clients, and stakeholders.
Awesome, Ricky. Just on that note, oh, sorry, Stuart.
No, go ahead. Thanks,
Yep.
Renil.
Yeah, just on that note, was there anything special that you could offer our lovely members or viewers?
Sure. Thank you. Well, I've just produced my 4th book called Leadership in 3 Words, and I'd be very delighted to offer a 20% discount to that book, as well as my other products, which are on the website. And this little book, Leadership in 3 Words, is a visually delightful insight, taking 3 words at a time, expanding on it with a visual to illustrate what are some of the great things that leaders in business and people in business have actually been doing that's made a significant and compelling difference to the way they communicate and the way they lead. And then you've also got that audit on the website, which is free.
Awesome, awesome. And also for everybody else, we do have a fact sheet. Just email us or find us on the social links, and we'll be more than happy to actually pass on Ricky's details and also the POWER acronym. Just before we wrap up, I just want to go through very quickly again for any of those people who might have joined in a little bit late. We were talking about the power of persuasive leadership and the acronym POWER, P-O-W-E-R, and the P stands for purpose. State your purpose and position early. The O stands for objective. When delivering information, have a clear and relevant objective. The W stands for why and when. Give context of why things matter and when to expect change. The E stands for expectations. Share your expectations of all stakeholders, and also basically putting yourself in their shoes. And the R stands for results. So ensure results can be measured and demonstrated regularly. I think my main takeaway with this, especially the first time I heard it, is also clarity. That's where I actually got a lot of learnings from. Sometimes you think you might know something, but we clutter the story a little bit ourselves. So this does declutter it. Give it a go. It's done wonders for me. I hope it does wonders for you. We're going to wrap up right now. Stuart, was there anything else that you wanted to finish up on, mate?
Just wanted to remind everyone to watch out for the future shows of InspireTalk coming up. One special guest coming through on the 24th of May is Jack DeLosa from the Entourage. That's going to be a massive show, so please book that one in. Make sure you've got the time slotted and see us on that day. And we've got a mystery guest coming in between there, and so we're going to release details of that very shortly. So keep an eye out for those shows coming up.
Juicy. Sounds cool. All right, awesome. Well, look, we will wrap up right now. Ricky, thanks again for your time and also for sharing all the little bits of golden nuggets that you did today. This is InspireTalk. We will see you next time.